Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, wall you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found,
So this older son who the Jewish religious leaders identified with, man, this should be confronting them right now about their self-centeredness and their self-righteous attitudes. I mean, they were there on the outside looking in, but they didn't know the Father. They didn't have any idea what would bring joy to the Father's heart. I mean, Jesus is basically saying to them, why are you on the outside looking in? Why aren't you inside? He's saying that to us too. Why aren't you participating in what brings joy to the Father? Come on, why aren't you involved in what the Father is doing? Why are you in His house, but you don't know Him? You don't know His heart. So the Father concludes, we had to celebrate this happy day. I know you don't understand it, son, but we had to celebrate this happy day. Your brother was dead, and he's come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. And that's where the story stops. Verse 32, it just stops. And you're like, well, what happened? I mean, what happened to the older brother? What happened to the older son? I mean, was he reconciled? How did it end? I think Jesus ended this way specifically for a reason. I think Jesus wants us to ask ourselves a question. Which son are you like? Which son are you like? Are you like the younger son? Are you away from the Father? Are you distant from the Father? Are you choosing to live your life your way apart from Him? Or are you like the older son who's living in his house, but you don't really know him? You don't know his heart. You know what's interesting about this question is the answer doesn't really matter. It's kind of a loaded question. It doesn't really matter, because either way, whether you are like the younger son or you're like the older son, you need to come to the Father. That's the bottom line. That's what Jesus was getting at. You need to come to the Father. I need to come to the Father. He loves us. The Father loves us more than we could possibly know. The Father has so much in store for us. The Father wants to be in a relationship with us so much. We're told that the Father, God, wants to be in a relationship so much with us that He gave His best, His Son, to die on a cross for us so that you and I could know Him. Scripture tells us in Romans, the Apostle Paul tells us that if He did this, if He would not spare His own Son, what else would He do? Wow. Did you know that Jesus says at one point in Luke, He tells us that the Father, listen to this, the Father wants to give us the kingdom. He has so much for us. He has so much for you. Why don't you come to Him? The choice is yours. Welcome back to Pathway Church Online. We're so glad that you're with us on Facebook and YouTube. We're excited about what's taking place today. We've got a very special opportunity. I've got a friend of mine, Raegan Glugosh, is joining us, and we welcome her as our special guest. I want to hear you a round of applause at home for Raegan, and we want to welcome her. Welcome, Raegan. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be back at Pathway Church.
It's been a while.
It has been, yeah.
Raegan is a missionary, and she has been a part of our outreach core partners for many years. We were trying to remember how many years, at least 20 that we can think of. She has been a part of our outreach, global outreach here at Pathway. One of the things that we really push is that our personal involvement makes a global difference. And we believe that. And so we get behind missionaries like Raegan and others. In fact, I believe that we are supporting right now currently about 24 different missionaries and missions organizations all over the globe. And we're excited about that. We're excited about being involved with them and with you. Yeah. And we just wanted to hear what is going on in Raegan's field, in Raegan's mission field, and just to see how God is moving and what God is doing through her and through the ministry that she is involved in. So since this is kind of a rekindling of friendships and getting to know each other again, and you were able to see my kids and my wife and some stuff, and but not everybody at Pathway Church is familiar with you, and it's probably a brand new thing for them. And especially, this is our first interview online with Pathway Church Online, so this is a brand new thing for all of us. And so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of back up in your story and help everyone get on the same page with us, because I know a little bit, but let's help everybody. So why and when did you become involved in missions and missions outreach?
Yeah. So my first outreach was with my local church. I was working as a registered nurse in a hospital in Mission Viejo, Mission Hospital. Okay. And it was a great hospital, but a little bit of a country club hospital. So I loved it there, but it was getting more and more computerized, more and more time at the desk and not a lot with the patient. Yeah. And God had always put in my heart, a passion for people. And I always knew that maybe one day my dream was that I could use my nursing skills for the Lord on the mission field. But not being from a ministerial family and not really having a lot of people to go to and mentor me on that, it was just a desire in my heart. And it wasn't until I was attending my church. It was in Santa Ana at the time. And my pastor, he said, we are going to take a missions trip to Romania. And he began to share about the needs there, that after the fall of communism, they had a lot of orphanages. They had a lot of kids that actually were growing up. And because of the conditions in the state institutions, they were so bad that they decided that it was better to live on the streets, and even at that time in sewers that they had. Because in the wintertime, it gets very cold in Romania, and the heat pipes that are they're down in the sewers because during communism, the government controlled everything, even the heat in your home. Wow. So you couldn't just turn on your heat like we do nowadays in our homes. So they regulated it. They regulated it. So it was government-controlled heat. Well, these large pipes, they would go down. They would be down in these sewers, and when they were turned on, the sewers would warm up. And so the children, they figured that out pretty quickly when your life is at stake. And so they would go down, take the lids off the manholes, and go down there, and they would live in the sewers. Make their beds there, and it doesn't sound very appealing to us, but it kept them alive during the wintertime and allowed them to, not every place is like Southern California where you can survive in the winter on the streets. And so when I heard that, and small children, 5, 6 years old, living down in these sewers, my heart broke, and you can't even imagine what that would be like. first of all, that age, not having family.
Yeah.
Second of all, living in those conditions. And so when I heard that, it was like the Lord began to put it on my heart. I could feel my heart racing that this is something, this is a missions trip that I want to go on. And so I signed up for that missions trip and I went on that. It was only a week-long trip to Bucharest. And I served in a local outreach there, and we spent some time going to the sewers where these children were, and in this home for children. And after that, just a few days, I knew the Lord was continuing to stir my heart, and it was like He was saying, you know what, this is what I have for you.
Wow.
This is something that I prepared you to do.
Wow.
And, I had been on missions trips.
So how were you knowing that? How were you sensing that?
Well, I had been on missions trips. Like I had been in other European countries, and then I'd also been across the border here to Mexico. And it almost seemed like this was impossible. Like I couldn't see myself doing it. But when I went to Romania, it was like God's heart for the people all of a sudden became my heart. And I came back after that week, and I went back to my job as an RN in the hospital I was working at. And I started telling people about what I did and what I saw. And I was working with a lot of sick people, and I worked on a trauma unit. And I'd come out of the room, and I just tell the stories of what we did in Romania, and I could hardly keep the tears back.
Wow.
And it was
just getting a hold of you then.
It was. And God was doing something in me, a deep work. And so I started to do what I could. I remember trying to collect supplies, because when we were on the streets, the kids didn't have socks or shoes. So we were taking our socks off because we had other ones in our suitcases. But the basic supplies and the medical supplies, a lot of the kids were sick living on the streets. And so I remember talking to my hospital, trying to collect supplies. And I ended up talking to a shipping company, trying to get the supplies back to Romania. But it was the start of something that I never could have imagined what God would do in my life. And it changed the trajectory of what I was doing as a nurse.
Wow.
And really propelled me into the mission of God, what He had for me in Romania.
So how long ago was that?
So this would have been about 25 years ago.
That's awesome.
Seems like just the other day, but it was 25 years ago.
Yeah, well, you can still sense the passion that you have for it. The desire.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you're in the same place too.
Yeah.
We just talked about that just a few minutes ago, that you're in the same place all these years, that God is still using you there, and to me that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And there's so much, what I find, there's so much to do in a place.
Yeah.
And it's really always resonated with me when I've heard stories of missionaries that have stayed in one place.
Right.
And
makes a difference.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a lifelong just dedication to really make an impact in a place, and learning a language, learning a culture.
Yep.
And not only that, but as you know, as missionaries, part of our role is to raise up local people.
Yeah.
And we want to work ourselves out of a job, and that's part of what I've been able to do in Romania over these years.
Especially as you stay longer, your influence increases.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Romania has been under so many years of oppression during communism. There's a lot of parts of Eastern Europe had communism, but they say that Romania had one of the toughest and most severe form of communism, and one of the indicators of it is when communism fell in Eastern Europe. In most countries, their dictators, they just put them out of power. But in Romania, you may remember Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife. They actually shot him and his wife.
Wow.
Gave him a very quick trial and then shot them. And I remember the first few years of living in Romania. They were shot on Christmas Day, on the 25th of December. And every Christmas, they would show the execution on TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I just think the Romanian people had been through so much.
Trying to make a statement, or
just maybe even their healing process, that they're actually gone.
Wow.
And I couldn't understand it, but I would say the first 10 years of living in Romania, every Christmas they would show that. For me, it was very traumatic, but I think for the people, it was just a part of their probably, yes, healing process or whatever, that closure. And so you just can't understand what kind of, such a demonic oppression that they lived under.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So one of the things I know that you've talked about is you were drawn to working with babies and moms. Obviously, you've mentioned children now.
Yeah.
So how did this start morphing into what has become Touch Romania?
Yeah.
How did that work?
So I mentioned that I was working with children that were living on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those children were 5, 6 years old. Other ones were teenagers. And so I started to get close to the girls that were teenagers and started to mentor them and take special interest in them. And what I started to see is some of them were getting pregnant on the streets. And so they were street children. And so having another generation of street children, and honestly, looking back on it, I'm sure they were being prostituted and trafficked even back then, 20-something years ago. And their kids, they would give birth and wouldn't take care of them, not having had their own parents around to show them. They were getting sick and dying on the streets. And I'd heard of girls that there was funerals and for their children because they died. And and so I was taking extra care to be with these girls when I found out they were pregnant, going with them to the hospital, making sure that they would get medical care that they needed, because most of the time they wouldn't go to the hospital till the day that they gave birth.
So you were doing this personally.
I was doing this personally.
What you're now doing corporately.
Yes,
through the ministry.
Exactly. And I was just going to the streets. We would do outreach, and then the girls that were there spending extra time and finding out what they needed to do, if they had the vitamins, if they had the treatment that they needed during their
prenatal stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one young girl, her name was Anna, and so I was on the streets visiting some of the kids, and they told me that she went into labor. And she went into the hospital. Wow. And so I found out what hospital that she was in. And I got to the hospital, and she had tuberculosis on top of it all. Many of the kids had tuberculosis. And so I got to the hospital. I couldn't find her. And then I found out that they had a tuberculosis maternity section of their hospital for women that were pregnant. It was hidden away.
Common thing then.
Yeah, and so I found her, and it was just the Lord, because I didn't even have her last name, because a lot of times, they don't go by their last names, just their first names. Right. I found Anna, and I remember walking into this little room with just had a few beds in it. And as soon as I walked in, she got up out of her bed and took me around my waist and just hugged me. And the tears were flowing down her cheeks because she was so happy to see me. And it's so, how giving birth and is such an emotional time. Right. And in Romania, it's not like here. Although they do pay, they have socialized health care. That you have to pay extra if you want an injection, if you want pills, you have to sort of give gifts or a little bit of a bribe to somebody to get the care that you need when you want it. And so not having money and the resources, she wasn't able to do this. And so she wasn't getting the best care there. And so all of that was just part of her emotions on that day. But after a few minutes, she wiped away her tears, and she said to me, "You know what? I had a baby girl, and I want you to come and see her."
Oh, wow.
And, I used to tease her when she was on the streets because she was 9 months pregnant. And I used to stick out my stomach, and I would say, "Who's pregnant here?" Because she was always so, thin, and you can hardly tell she was pregnant. Wow. But honestly, I was thinking to myself, the fact that the baby is born and is amazing, that God's hand is already on exactly this child. And so, of course, I wanted to see her baby and hold her baby. And so we went down to the nursery, and it was at the basement of the hospital, and we knocked on the door of the nursery. I remember knocking on it. We were talking and catching up, and nobody answered. We can hear babies crying on the other side of the door. Wow. And so we knew it was the nursery. So I went to go and find somebody. If you know me, I don't just leave things. I figure out what's the mystery around here. Exactly. And so there was nobody. I searched that unit, and it was just like nobody around. When I came back, I can tell that Anna, she was weak. She'd just given birth, having tuberculosis. And so I said, you know what? I don't understand this, but there's nobody around. I know this is the nursery. And I know you are tired. You need to eat. You need to rest. And so I said, why don't you go back to your room? I'll go with you. And tomorrow I need to come back. Now I know that you have a little girl. I can get some clothes and prepare diapers and all of that because the hospital didn't provide that either. Bring some food for you and the baby. And I'll be back in the morning. We'll do this again. And so that's what I did. I left and I went shopping. And the next day I came back with my bags full of things for her and the baby. And I got to her room and the bed that she was on was empty. And at first I thought to myself, well, she must be in the bathroom and I'll just wait here a few more minutes. Well, she didn't come back from the bathroom. And I talked to the nurse that was in taking care of that section of rooms. And I asked her, I said, where did my friend Anna go? Because her bed, is empty. And so I'll never forget what she said. She said that morning, her boyfriend, and it was January, very, very cold and snowy in Bucharest. And she told me that her boyfriend that was on the streets, probably also her pimp, came and picked her up and discharged her from the hospital. And I asked about her baby. Did her baby go with her? And she didn't know. And all of a sudden, it was just like my heart dropped because I'm thinking to myself, I'd been in the sewers. And, little babies, newborns, they're very, very fragile and delicate. And
high risk.
Yes, high risk. And so I thought to myself, if she's bringing her baby on the streets in this weather, she doesn't have the proper clothing, she's going to be sick, but her baby is also not going to make it through all of this. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to go back to where I know she was staying. I'm going to convince her to come back to the hospital, bring her baby. But before I did that, it was like the Holy Spirit just stopped me and dropped the thought in my mind, before you do that, go back to that nursery and see if her baby's there. And so that's what I did. Before I left to go and find Anna, I went back to the nursery, found my way back there, got to that same door, knocked on it again, expecting that nobody was going to answer it. Well, within a moment, somebody came. It was a nurse or nursing assistant that opened the door, and I went into this room, and there was about 30 other babies in this nursery. And so I asked the nurse, I said, hey, my friend Anna was here the other day, and she gave birth, and do you know if her baby's here? And so the nurse right away knew Anna, and she pointed out a baby that was right in front of me, and she said, that's her baby girl.
Wow.
And so I said, can I hold her? In Romania, they have a lot of rules. And so they don't always let you hold the babies. And they're wrapped. I always call them like a cabbage roll, or else here we call them burrito wraps. They're wrapped so tightly that you don't want to mess with their wraps because they don't want their arms or their legs getting out and keep their body temperature. And so I asked the nurse if I could hold her baby. And so she said I could. And, I was so caught up in this child, seeing what her mother had been through. I remember when she told me that she was pregnant, she said that her street boyfriend actually beat her up in hopes that she would lose the baby. Because if he was abusing her and prostituting her, he didn't want her pregnant.
Yeah.
And so those thoughts were just going through my head. Then you hold this baby in your hands. And it's just a testimony of the miracle of God. Yeah. And I started, even when the nurse wasn't looking at me, being the good nurse that I am, I was doing a little mini physical exam just to make sure the little fingers were okay, the toes were there, and I could tell that here she was perfectly, perfectly normal. And I was so caught up in her that I wasn't even looking around the rest of the room, the nursery that I was in. But as I looked up, I noticed that there was something so different in my spirit. It was like I couldn't figure out why this nursery was different than other ones that I'd been in before. But then as I started looking more closely, I could see that some of the babies that were there were 2-3 months old. Other ones looked about 6 months old. And then other ones, I could see that they saw that I was holding this baby, and they were trying to pull themselves up in their bed. and wanted me to come
In hopes
over.
of, yeah,
Exactly. Now
to
little
interact.
ones go like this with their fingers, and they wanted me to come over
Yeah.
and hold them. And so out of curiosity, I just, I'm always learning things in Romania. And I just said to the nurse, I said, I don't understand. This nursery is so much different than other ones that I've been to, because children are all different ages.
Yeah.
Normally at maternity hospitals, you come and you leave your baby there a few hours, maybe a few days, but then you go home.
Right.
I said, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense to me. And I remember the nurse looking at me and almost laughing at me that, I didn't understand this. And she began to share with me. She said, this isn't our normal nursery, newborn nursery for the hospital. And I didn't understand. And she said, this is the one that we keep in the basement. And she said, we have another nursery upstairs.
Oh, wow.
And she said, this one is just the one that is specifically set aside for the babies that have been recently abandoned by their mothers.
Oh, wow.
And when she said that, how do you respond to that? I remember looking around in the faces of these babies and thinking to myself, how can all of these babies, how can they be abandoned? How is that possible? You mean they've been here from the day they've been born, and how does a mother turn her back on her child, leave her baby behind after she's carried that child for 9 months?
Yeah.
And that put me on a trajectory that I began to work with babies and their mothers, because I started to see that it's great to go in and to hospitals and institutions and help babies that are orphaned, but we needed to interrupt this cycle of babies being abandoned.
Yeah.
And
Get
that,
ahead of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that I started to realize is that we needed to begin working with the mothers.
Wow.
Babies just don't spontaneously arrive here.
That's right. That's right.
And, at first I was a little bit resistant. This is over a period of time because I saw the mothers abandoning the babies.
Right.
And I thought to myself, you judge people before you know the circumstances.
Yeah.
And I thought, how can a mother abandon her baby? What kind of a person is that? But as I remember sitting with these mothers and hearing the stories of violence, of domestic violence, of being trafficked, of living in severe poverty, of having so many children already, story after story after story, some of them, if you can believe this, grew up in an orphanage and they didn't have a birth certificate, because they left that orphanage before anybody could give them a birth certificate.
Right.
They didn't know a lot of information about themselves. And so in Romania, in order to keep your baby, like in any hospital, you need to have an ID to prove who you are. And they didn't.
Wow.
And they didn't have...
So they could have the baby and not even be able to keep the baby.
Exactly. Because they couldn't prove that that was their child.
Wow.
And in their mind, to get that information, they don't want to go back. They've been through a lot of trauma back in that orphanage.
Yeah.
They don't have the emotional strength to go to the police department and get that. They don't have the money. They don't. Sometimes you have to go back to the city that you were born in, which could be hundreds of miles away from where they are in the capital city of Bucharest.
Wow.
That's just too overwhelming for them.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we started to take them by the hand, going to these cities with them, speaking on their behalf, going to the police station, getting their documents, and then they would keep their babies.
Wow.
And so I remember the first mother that we worked with and we did this, she actually had twins. And she ended up keeping them because we did this with her. And then we realized, okay, now we just need to find a place for her to live. There's got to be maternal centers in Romania. This is, there's got to be somewhere for her. And I don't know if you've done this before, if you wanted to help somebody and you start helping them, but then you realize, okay, what did I get myself into?
Right, and one more domino has
exactly,
to take place.
Exactly. Well, this is what happened in this situation. And to make a long story short, we ended up working with the church, and they ended up helping, but it wasn't a long-term solution. It was just somebody helping here and then another person helping there. And I discovered from this experience that there were no centers, no homes for mothers to go to, just orphanages. And so out of this, God birthed in our hearts to start something, a home for mothers, and not only just a place for them to have a warm home and food on the table, but as we started to work with these young ladies, we started to realize that the healing that started to take place in their hearts, in their lives, because nobody had ever done that. Nobody had ever made the effort to go with them, to do something, to care enough about them, like to take them by the hand, like a mother or father would do. And they started asking questions about why would we do this for them when nobody had done this?
Yeah, why would you invest in them?
Exactly. And we began to share Christ with them and why we're doing this, because, you know, Christ has done this for us and opening up doors to share the gospel for us. It's because of Christ's love. We love you, and not just a love that just says something, but for us, it means tangible expressions of love.
Right.
And they started to see this and were very moved by our actions and our love for them. And so we can see that we were already discipling them and we're investing in them, and we wanted to be able to do it more. And so what best way to do it? Be able to stay in a home for 24/7, like a discipleship home, similar to a Teen Challenge program, mother and child, where they can come and be safe and get back into school, whatever they needed to do so they can get on a track of success for their life, build them up emotionally, spiritually, practically. Some of the girls that have come to our home in Romania, we have a lot of Roma population, otherwise known as Gypsy.
Oh, wow. And
a lot of times they aren't sent to the schools, and so they don't even know how to tell time, how to
so education is part of the
education.
Process. Yeah.
And so all of the girls, we have a specific plan for each one of them. We have believers, people that feel called to the ministries, that are social workers that work with us. They know that what needs to be done, where they need to get the paperwork. And so each girl... So
that's how the maternal home, the center started taking place.
Exactly.
Was out of what you were experiencing. And it just kind of, one thing led to the next. And I remember we actually ended up buying this home, and I'd never bought anything in Romania. And I remember coming back and just saying, you know what, we found this home and this is how much it costs. And being scared to death of, God, what did I get myself into? And just, you know, it's one step of faith after the other that you just take us, you know, it's overwhelming. And I remember, now that I'm thinking about it, I think we were involved in something.
I'm sure you
in
were.
that early stage when you guys were looking to do that. Wow.
Yeah. And I remember in that project, the owner said, if I had this much time to raise this money, and in Romania, there's like bank loans, you don't do that. Everything's cash.
Right.
And I remember I was able to raise a down payment, and he said, if you don't get the rest of it in this time, then I keep the rest, and the deal's done. So having that pressure on me... But the Lord was faithful. The Lord has been so faithful. And and the churches, your church and other churches in Southern California just have been amazing and just providing. And, you know, the beautiful thing about this ministry, I really believe this is the Lord's heart.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you look through the Bible, you know, He is the God of the castaways.
That's right.
If He had God's mission statement, you know, it's just, He went to those that were broken, that nobody else wanted.
Yep.
And His glory shone through the brightest in the lives of these broken people that He came and restored. And God used them, you know, it's an upside down kingdom, those that we would think would be the least. And I think of myself, never would have thought I would be able to do anything like this for God. But He uses those that, you know, go forth in fear and trembling.
That's right. That's when He says, be bold and be courageous,
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
That's my story, and I know it's probably your story and so many other people's story. And maybe there's those listening right now that God is speaking to their heart and saying, you know what, I have a heart to do something.
For sure.
Maybe there's something maybe going on in San Diego Maybe there's something going on in a part of the world that every time they hear about this, that their heart is moved.
Drawn to it.
Exactly. And maybe it's just, something small, and they feel like they can't do it. And you know what? You can't do it. I can't do it.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's when
Through
we
God.
can't do it that God says, I will be with you. I will go with you. It's not about you. It's about what God can do through a vessel that is weak and recognizes that they need a God to do this. And he is, I was just say to the team in Romania that I work with, he is the CEO of Touched Romania. He's the CEO of it.
Yeah.
We're the junior partners.
Right.
We're just he's driving this vehicle. And we're just sitting beside him as his co-pilot. And so we have a need, we have a problem. We say to him, okay, what are you going to do about it, God?
Yeah.
We need this. We
Show
have
us,
this problem.
Provide for us.
Exactly.
Direct us. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you've already given us a lot right here, all at once. The idea of Touch Romania, where it kind of birthed from.
Yeah.
I know you brought some pictures. I'd
Yeah.
love to show some pictures
Yeah.
to everybody that's watching today of just. You can kind of walk us through
Yeah.
these and tell us. I was really curious. I saw these
Yeah.
earlier, the wall here.
So this is kind of like our wall of fame, in the Hollywood,
Yeah,
this is our little seat.
That's it.
Well, we started doing this when our first generation of mothers and children came.
Wow.
And we started to just put their feet prints on paper and hang them on the wall and frame them. And it's become pretty much a tradition of ours. And so you can see some of these baby steps that newborns, and I don't know if you can see the year.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
2014, this is 2009,
Yeah.
and 2008.
Yeah.
And so you can see the different years. And so we've had so many women and children come through that we've had to kind of pick now, and we've had to redo these. But these are just some of the lives
That's
we've been
amazing.
able to touch over the years. And so now a lot of the kids that are in Bucharest still, if they're 10, 12 years old, they'll come and they'll pick out their little baby feet. And they'll say, hey, this is my baby feet, and this is my room where I stayed.
Wow.
And they have, one of the things that people don't know is the ministry, it's not just for a certain amount of time, because they actually become our community. And so we, during this time of COVID, it's really hit the single mothers and the families the hardest, because in any society, it's the single women, the children that are hit the hardest. And so what we started to do is giving out donations to these families to help supplement, because they're hit hard being a single parent. If you lose your job or your hours are cut back, you don't have anything else to fall back on.
Right.
And so we've had outreaches in the community for a long time, but we've had to even increase that because of this COVID time. And so a lot of the kids, they've been through a tutoring. We do tutoring for them. We have a youth group that we ended up starting for them, working with the local church. And
So these are kids that have grown up and now are in the youth. Wow.
Because they're in our community.
Yeah,
And when you're single, you don't always have mother, grandfather, if you've grown up in an orphanage, to take care.
Yeah.
And so when their kids are sick, they end up calling us saying, hey, you know what? I can't find anybody to take care of my child. They have something, and I need to work to keep my job. Can I bring them? And so if we can't keep them in the maternal center for whatever reason, we'll try to talk to another mother that has maybe been in the same generation, that they're friends, that they can take the child. And so it's really, it's been beautiful, just the longevity. So it's not just the year that they're in the program, but it goes on for years and years.
Wow.
And because Romania is so communal, also, it's very helpful that they have that family already. That's the basis or values. So this is a process. This girl right here, she's been interviewed. If I remember right, she was 16 years old when she came into our program. And she just finished her interview process, and she's being welcomed. You can see a little baby there, that she is being welcomed by the team. This is our lead social worker. being welcomed into the team. And these two, all three of these are Romanian ladies. This one with the blonde hair here, she's a missionary associate.
Okay.
So within the Assemblies of God, we have a
Yeah.
program called Missionary Associate Program.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started off just for coming for 2 years to Romania to help me. And now she's a full-time appointed missionary,
Oh, wow.
and she's from Boston. And so her name is Becky Nichols, and she's just been a huge, huge blessing. And sometimes that's how the
Wow.
Lord does it.
Oh, yeah.
Going for a short period of time, you see how it is, and now she loves Romania, and she's practically Romanian herself.
Wow.
So a huge blessing to the team.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know these kids now are grown up. I think I was being told that they're older now.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about this.
This
picture.
is one of our first generations of children. So these two girls on the end, they are actually finished. This girl just finished high school, and we had in Romania, you have to actually take exams, and you have to pass them. And if you don't pass them, you don't get to go on to university. Because it's a socialized system.
Yeah.
And so we want to break that cycle of poverty, and part of that is education, getting them as educated as possible so they can go further than their parents did and have more options. And so she just finished high school and she just started in university.
Oh, wow.
And so these children are also grown, but this little guy here, his name is Antonio. As you can see, his lip and he had cleft lip and cleft palate. He came to our home because nobody would take him.
Oh, wow.
And because when you have medical problems and it's a single mother like his mother was, that means that the government had some short-term solutions, but he was going to be a long-term problem for them because he was going to have 5 or 6 surgeries. And so when he had surgeries, that meant we had to take a person full-time and go to the hospital with the mother and help them. And so you have to bring food every day. You have to do, that's a lot of work when that takes a person out of your team to have to run and do that. So they knew that. And so they said, no, we don't want him. And so our ministry, of course, when we heard this, we knew it was going to be more work for us, but we agreed that we wanted to take him and his mother in. And so today he's had several surgeries, and he is a teenager, a normal teenager, and his mother and him, you know, they're still their family unit, and he could have been one of those children that were in that hospital, just abandoned because his mother was overwhelmed, not knowing how she could do those surgeries, not being able to pay for them, not being able to just emotionally do it.
Right.
And so, all of these children are children that have been through, and their lives could have gone in a total different direction if it wasn't for Touch from Romania and the home called Hagar Home.
Wow. Wow.
So these are other children that have been in our program and their mothers. I think this one is, she is our youngest mother. She was 14 years old when she came to our home. And this is a picture that we were at church. So all the girls that come through, we all go to church together many times. It's the first time they've actually been to church and actually heard a clear presentation of the gospel. Romania is an Orthodox country, but for them, being Orthodox is basically saying that you're Romanian.
Right.
You don't understand that actually has to do with a relationship with the Lord.
Right.
And this picture is this is just a typical, this is the room that the mothers live in. Many times there's bunk beds in them. And one of the things too that's a little bit unique about us is if the mother comes in pregnant or she just had her baby, many times they may also have 2 other ones. And so especially if it's a situation of domestic violence in the home, we take the whole family.
So all the kids come.
Exactly.
Wow.
One time, the most we've ever had was a mother that came in. It was actually a pastor in our community that called us and asked us to take the family. But she had 4 children, all under the age of 6 years old. And she was pregnant. She was pregnant and she was living in an abandoned building with them because of her situation. And so we ended up taking her in. And I don't know if she's in one of these pictures, but the story about her is her children are now grown as well. But she is now working with us as one of our care workers.
Oh, wow.
Not a legal social worker, but one that interacts
Yeah.
and works with the mothers, helps them complete their goals that they have, helps disciple them.
Wow.
And that was
Comes
one
full
of
circle then.
exactly that's one of our dreams and our goals, that would happen, that God would bring one of our mothers back and be able to minister. You know, when you tell a mother that you have been in that circumstance or worse, their faith, when you say to them, you know what, God has a plan for your life. You are not always going to be in this situation. One day you're going to be free. You're going to have your own life. All these things that you have been through, your children are going to grow up. They're going to do more than you have. He's going to provide for you. I know it seems like finding housing and all of these practical things are impossibilities for you. But one day you're going to see that God is faithful. It's one thing for me to say that, but it's another thing for a mother that has 5 children.
Wow.
To feed those children and find an apartment, a house.
Yeah.
To be able to have those children. And, you know, this one mother that works with us, her name is Mihaela. And you know what? She's one of those mothers that she just does not waste her time worrying, because she has seen miracle after miracle in her life. And it's so funny because I find myself worrying for her more than she's worrying for herself.
Wow.
But we've seen that God takes the faith that she has and he honors that.
Yeah.
And she walks in faith. Her life is just a walk of faith. And that faith, fear is contagious, but also faith is contagious.
It's true.
So she's able to tell her story with these mothers. And it is amazing to see the impact that she has.
Wow.
And how what a blessing that she has been in the ministry, and an encouragement that here, if Mihaela can do it, with all of these challenges against her, then maybe God could do something similar in my life.
And that's got to be really rewarding for you too, because you realize that, you know, we played a part in this, and you're seeing this fruit right there in front of you. That's amazing. What's this picture here?
So this is just one of the mothers that came to our home, and she just had a very challenging situation, and now her and her daughter are doing well. And so, just a blessing. And just, I love these pictures too of the children, to see how small that they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so right here, these 3 these are Mihaela's 3 children.
Right here. Okay.
So these are 3, but there's some that aren't in this picture.
Yeah.
But now, you know, this is was her youngest before she gave birth to the one that she came in the home with. But her children were just, and this one feels called as a worship leader.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really interesting that how God, even at a young age, is speaking to these kids' lives, and just
and to know then that the trajectory of their life has been changed.
Exactly.
You know, by what God has done, obviously through your ministry and in affecting Mom. Yeah. And now here we have a whole generation of kids that are being affected. Yeah.
And it's funny when they come, now they're like you know how it is, it's like pastors' kids when they come, it's like now they're kind of like missionary kids. Yeah. When they come to the home, it's like, get that out for me. Can you go throw that out on the wash? And because they've lived there too, but they love being a part of that. And one of them that's not in this picture, her dream is to work in our offices. Oh, wow. To be one of a secretary or one of the accountants, because when she was little, we used to get her own little desk and put it beside our desk, and we let her staple things. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
This is just another little boy that God is, his mother came to our program. So this is a picture of, we do camps every summer. And because, I was wondering what was. So this was us getting ready to go to a summer camp. And this is the one that wants to be in our office. This is the youngest that wasn't in the other picture. Yeah. And so, we're just getting ready for camps, because many of them, although we actually have the Black Sea that is outside of Bucharest, 2 hours away, and many of them have never been there their whole life. And the mothers or their children. And so it's one of the things that we tried to get them out of the city, either at the Black Sea or a camp in the mountains, just for them to be able to experience also Romania and its beauty, and just having special activities for them. And then also, a lot of them, because we do activities together, they are friends. And so just being able to help
Right.
build that community together, and their
Right.
mothers as well, to have that support system that we can do this. And so this little girl, she came into our program, and her mother had been grown up in an orphanage. She had been trafficked, and so she was kind of bouncing around from organization to organization, and so we realized after a short time she also had some mental health issues, that she wasn't going to do well raising her child. And we can already see symptoms of just not being attached or over attached to certain people, that it was affecting her daughter. And I haven't really talked about it, but early on, we also started a foster care program. It's part of our threefold mission. And so children that were abandoned and their mothers didn't want to keep them, we had families, foster care families, that we would place them in. And so we'd still be in contact, we'd still be able to help them, but just in a different way. And so we've had about 30 children out of our foster care program that have been adopted throughout the years by Romanian families. And so a real blessing to have Romanians taking care of their own
for sure.
children.
For sure.
And so this little girl, we talked to her mother, and we just realized, and she came to the point where she wasn't compliant with the track that we had her on. And so we got the government involved, she was involved, and so we actually ended up putting this little girl in one of our foster care families, and she's doing very, very well today. Actually, her mother works at a missionary school, and so she actually goes to a private Christian school.
Oh, wow.
And so she's doing very, very well, and her mother...
Life has changed.
Yeah, her mother is, I'm not sure exactly how she's doing because we lost track of her, but sometimes, things don't always end up exactly how you can't control everything.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the biggest impact that we have is on the children and being able to put them in safe places. But she's growing up knowing the Lord. She's getting a Christian education in a school.
Yeah.
That she would probably otherwise not be able to go to. And so
that's kind of ironic too, because your story started out helping kids, and then you come to a child like this and you're able to even though circumstances didn't turn out the way that you would have preferred with the mother, here you are able to help a child and change her life.
And have this safety net there, that in
it's
case
just
something
amazing.
doesn't help. And going back to, when you invest long term in a missionary, in missions, that these are the, we understand the systems in the country. And had I been there short term, I would not understand that and not able to make such a deep transformational impact in the community of Romania that God has really embedded me in.
Right. Yeah, long term makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we're probably out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of move us along. But, the thing that I have been so impressed with you about is, I mentioned to you earlier, just your commitment, not just to your ministry, but also to your partnership with churches. We have been partners with Raegan for all of these years, and I've got one of her most recent newsletters sitting here. Because I have been so impressed with just the connection, the partnership that we feel. For those of us that have been a part of Pathway Church, we have felt that all throughout this time. And so I wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And really, that's one of the things that drove us to kind of choose your ministry, Touch Romania, as our project for this year. And then COVID hit. We had started out with some fundraisers and some things, and COVID hit and affected everything, as you well know. And so we decided just recently that we're going to extend and make this a project of 2020, 2021, but that Touch Romania will be our kind of our focus. And so that's really the reason that we had Raegan come with us today, just to share, remind us
of our focus and just our involvement with Touch Romania. And I know we can send people to your website. What is it? touchromania.org,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Yeah. If you want more information about that, I'm sure we'll have it on the screen, touchromania.org.
They can email me directly too.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm really excited, but when we get done here, I've got a check for you that you'll be taking home at least for the first installment
Yeah.
of what we're able to do, and just getting behind what you're doing at the Hagar home, especially. We really believe in, you can hear it, you can sense it from Raegan, just this passion, this drive, and it's obviously God inspired and God anointed. And it's exciting to be, in partnership with missionaries like you, because we see it, and it's not just a job, it's not just something you're doing, it's your heart, and those are the kinds of causes and organizations and purposes that we really want to be a part of, and so it's real exciting.
Well, thank you. And then, you know what? It's a huge answer to prayer, because when COVID hit,
Yeah.
some people within the community and some churches just dropped off. And all of a sudden, fear hits you.
Oh, big time.
And thinking, okay, what are we going to have to do? Are we, you feel very responsible for the ministry and the people and the lives that God has entrusted you with. And so, I know that God is our provider, but when you have these tangible emails that are coming in, or people writing you and saying, you know what, God laid you on, it's just, so encouraging and inspiring.
Timely.
Yes, timely. And for me to be able to go back to the team and just say, you know what, I know that because I'm an American, you think that I'm full of faith or just whatever, but this is a tangible evidence of God's provision.
Absolutely.
And it encourages the team so much. And I want to tell you that I'm going to let them know that
that's awesome.
this is people joining with us, holding up our arms through this. And so it's such an encouragement, means so much to us in Romania. I know distance separates us, but it's a small world, and we feel so privileged to have people like you. There's nothing like the local church when it comes to missions, and just the commitment and people's prayers that means so much to us.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that too, is, it's not just financial support, it's prayer support as well. And that's the great thing about the newsletter, is it gives us an opportunity to know what's going on and how we can be involved prayerfully as well as financially. So if you are interested in being a part of our 2020-2021 outreach project to Touch Romania, you could go to Pathway Church's website. That's pathwaychurchsandiego.org, and message us, and we'll get you the information as soon as possible. But for now, I know Raegan is going to be headed back to Romania mid-November, did you say?
End of November.
End of November.
Yes.
So I want to pray for her ministry as we wrap off today, and just believe that God is going to continue to use her and her team there, and then use us here in the States to be able to be a support team, a support factor for them. So let's pray, Raegan, all right? Amen. God, thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you. That's the biggest thing here, to be involved in what you're doing all over the world. It's so encouraging to hear, so amazing to me to hear of the lives that are being impacted by this ministry, and to know then that we as a church have an opportunity to be a part of that. And so God, I ask that you would continue to bring your anointing, your provision, your direction to Raegan as she's here in the States, and then as she returns, that you would be with her team in Romania as they continue to lead and guide and provide and minister during COVID. I ask that you would help them to navigate the months, weeks, months ahead, these seasons ahead, even through the COVID times. And I ask that you would provide, God, that you would provide all that they need. We know, God, that your heart is for those that have needs. We are those people. We know that your heart is to bring grace and mercy and love and acceptance into our lives and into those lives that so desperately need it. And I know that you're a part of this ministry. You are the lead. You are the source. And we just ask that you would just overwhelm them with your blessing, God. That you would, Lord, provide abundantly what they need. That you would give them insight into direction and purpose and future. That you would open up doors that they have never seen open before.
Yes, Jesus.
And that your Holy Spirit would guide. Thank you for what you're doing, what you have already done. At first, God, when I heard Raegan sharing, my heart was broken. But then when I see these smiles on these kids' faces in these pictures, we can't help but find joy in what we know brings joy to your heart. Thank you for Raegan and her team, their ministry there. Thank you for all that you're doing through them. We pray this in your name. Amen.
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 Thanks for being with us today in Pathway Church Online. You can tell that we have a heart here at Pathway for missions and for people's lives. And we believe that God has called us as a church to help people follow Jesus through the local church, but also globally. And so if you are ever wanting to look for a church in the San Diego area, come check us out. We'd love to have you here at Pathway Church. God bless you. Have a great week.